do so during the general administration section of tonight's agenda. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful. With that, I'd like to ask Commissioner Altamirano to lead us in the pledge.
Sure. A pleasure. Hands over heart. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our new commissioner, Nicole DiCamillo, who will be, first item of business is to swear in the new commissioner.
Nicole, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Repeat after me. I, Polly Harris,
I, Nicole DiCamillo,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will take this obligation freely
that I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you.
And again, welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Item number 2, does anybody have any comments on items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this commission? I have none. Item number 3 and 4, which are part of the consent calendar. Item 3, consideration of approval of the September 26, 2018 Economic Development and Housing Commission meeting minutes. And item number 2, consideration of Resolution 18-1 establishing the date, time, and location of the 2019 meeting schedule calendar for this commission. Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar, please?
I move.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Moving on to the regular agenda, item number 5, consideration of Amendment 1 of the Community Development Block Grant 2017 Annual Action Plan and Amendment number 1 to the CDBG 2018 Annual Action Plan. Ms. Whitaker.
Good evening, Commissioners. Is this on? Okay. I'll use the microphone. Okay.
Should be.
So I'm here tonight to provide the Commission with information regarding a proposed amendment to both the 2017 and 2018 annual action plans. So both the 2017 and 2018 annual action plans funded a services contract with Project Sentinel. It was a fair housing counseling agency.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
There we go.
So both the 2017 and 2018 annual action plans funded a contract with Project Sentinel. Project Sentinel is a fair housing counseling agency, and they were contracted with to provide fair housing services to city residents. So currently, with the way the annual action plans are structured, these services are only being provided to low to moderate income individuals. So in October, staff kind of reevaluated the funding structure to see how we could provide these services on a citywide basis regardless of income. So basically what these amendments will do is to do just that. It'll reallocate the funds and kind of play with the funding structure to allow these services to be provided on a citywide basis. So if you take a look at the slide, I kind of gave an example of currently how our annual action plans are structured. So each year we receive our yearly allocation. 20% of that yearly allocation goes for a set aside for general planning and administration costs. The rest of our yearly allocation goes to projects, programs, services, and as you may recall, in 2017 and 2018, we used our project funding for the Permanent Supportive Housing Project and the Fair Housing Services Contract. So with that said, program services and projects that are funded using project money are subject to CDBG national objectives. What that means is that they have to benefit low to moderate income individuals. What we will do with the amendment is we will move the Fair Housing Services Contract to be funded with general administration and planning costs. The reason why this works out is because general planning and administration costs are not subject to CDBG national objectives, therefore allowing us to provide these services on a citywide basis, regardless of income status. So to provide an example, I'm using the 2017 annual action plan. So again, we received our yearly allocation. We set aside $109,000, 20% of our allocation for general administration and planning costs. So like I said, the amendment will move the Fair Housing Services to the general planning and administration costs to be paid out of the $109,000. But as you can see, we still now have this $21,000 of unallocated funds. What this amendment will do is it will move the $21,000 to the Permanent Supportive Housing Project, therefore increasing the allocation by $21,000. So basically, that's the amendment to both the 2017 and the 2018 annual action plans. The reason why fair housing services are an eligible cost under general planning and administration is that entitlement jurisdictions who receive federal funding, they are obligated to further fair housing objectives as part of their grant program. So that's why it's an eligible cost for general planning and administration. So this concludes my presentation. There is a recommended action for the commission to vote yes or no on whether to recommend that the council approve these amendments. So I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
I'd like just to make one comment, and it's administrative. There appears to be a typo on attachment 1 with the dates December 6, 2018 through January 4th. Under consideration and review, or coordination and review.
Okay.
January
Yes.
4th, 2019, am I reading?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, so that would be. So the comment period for these amendments will be December 6th, 2018 through January 4th, 2019.
Okay. Any comments from the commissioners?
I think it's a good recommendation, definitely.
Quick question on, by moving fair housing services from the project side of the equation to the general planning and administration set aside, does that in any way reduce the ability to respond to needs of those folks that have been receiving those services to date, or does it maintain the status quo and simply free up additional funds?
So it maintains the status quo because the contract that we had with Project Sentinel was it was on a citywide basis. We found that through talks with our HUD rep that it was only supposed to be for low to moderate income individuals. So the contract does allow for these services to be provided on a citywide basis, and the cost would incur those costs. I hope did that answer?
I think so.
Okay.
So as a whole, then, it's just a net benefit to the PSH project
That is correct.
funding.
That is correct.
Fantastic.
Any other comments?
I had a question. So Project Sentinel will still be receiving the funds? It's just where the funds are coming out of is the only difference? Or is the city of West Sacramento taking over new duties to oversee this fair housing element?
No, everything would stay consistent with the contract. It's just where the funding is coming. So nothing on Project Sentinel side will change.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, sir, Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you for the animation, always helps. Just one question. Can you remind me what the low to mod income requirements are again? So the service population would remain the same if I understood you, and CDBG defines low mod income levels to be what again? I think 80% of...
Right, so it's 80% or below, and Ro, correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, 80% of the AMI or below. That is correct.
Wow. And that remains the service population or the target
With the amendment?
with the amendment?
So no, the amendment would
Okay.
allow the service to be provided to any individual experiencing fair housing discrimination regardless of income status.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Sorry, that kicks me back to my question then. Aren't you then expanding the pool of individuals that would be utilizing these services?
That is correct.
But there's more than sufficient capacity so that you don't foresee that that would be a detriment to people who are low to median still being able to access the services they need?
No, because Project Sentinel has, even before this amendment, they had been providing these services citywide. It was brought to our attention when our HUD rep kind of reviewed it, and so that's kind of why we are now doing this amendment. So they had already been provided to citywide residents from the beginning, and the funds were sufficient to provide those services.
Right. The funds were sufficient to provide those services, but were the services sufficient to fulfill the need? Do you see what I'm
Yes,
saying?
yes,
Like if you're serving
yes.
people that are not low to moderate income, but they're being provided services, is that then in any way diminishing needs of the low and moderate income folks that are not able to get the services they need because we're servicing a broader field of individuals?
Correct. So based on, we had contracted with Project Sentinel in the past, and even based on the invoices that we have received from them thus far, there has still been room in the budget to now take on these additional clients.
Okay. Which means they have more capacity than there is need, so
That
there
is
should be
correct.
no change in. Okay,
Correct,
great,
yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Didn't mean to belabor the point.
And the program is a positive program as far as helping out individuals. I mean, you get more bang for the buck, correct? Thank you for the presentation. I'll echo Commissioner Campbell's comment about the PowerPoint, and I know where to go if I need a PowerPoint. It explained the situation. So there being no further comments, discussion, I'd like to ask the commission for a vote. Can I have a motion, please?
Sure, so I motion that we recommend to the city council that they approve these modifications.
A second, please.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any further discussion? Thank you.
Thank you.
For a wonderful presentation. Moving on to item number 6.
And half our audience leaves.
Presentation and discussion of development assistance policy. Ms. Richards, how are you this evening?
Good evening, Commissioners. I am going to apologize in advance. I'm getting over a cold, so if I get hoarse or clear my throat a few times, bear with me. But
You're excused with coals and smoke in the air.
Yeah.
It's understandable.
and I'm happy to be here. For those of you that may not know me, I am Senior Program Manager in Economic Development. My role is traditional economic development, and by that I mean business attraction, business assistance, business retention and expansion, and I get all the calls that they don't know what to do with at the front counter. So that is my role, and I've been involved in many great projects, such as the firehouse renovation, where Burgers and Brew now is. That was a project that Economic Development worked on, and it was my project. Also have been involved with working with attracting La Mesa RV, as well as working with United Bakery on their many expansions in the city, and a few others that, such as Bayer Crop Science, It's been, it's been a real treat to attract businesses and assist businesses with really very little incentives. And what we have is we have a lot of businesses that call and say, well, what kind of financial assistance will you give to us to move our business there? And we sort of have danced around that and said, well, we've got great customer service and we've got streamlined permitting and, we have all these wonderful things and we're such a great city. And so that's worked very well for us for a very long time. And of course, we have a great city. We have a great city that is just doing amazing things all over the city. And so that's served us very well. But we find now that we're in a much more competitive environment now. We're competing not only with other cities in the region, but also cities from out of state and other states. And so we just find that we need more tools. And we find that some of the programs that served us well in the past, for example, the business loan program, was a great tool. We assisted Capitol Bowl, we assisted United Bakery, we made several other small business loans to local businesses. And so those things we'd like to explore again, maybe, having some new programs that we can, use to kind of get the door open, get businesses interested in talking with us again about locating in the city. The development assistance policy that we have now is very old. However, it still has a lot of good content and it has a lot of good criteria. Things like, don't give out more assistance than you really need to. Make sure that it fulfills other city objectives. So there's a lot of good material in there that, will probably just need to be updated. We've relied a lot on things like Southport Business Park's development agreement, which set forth negotiated fee incentives that reduced the development impact fees to new businesses building facilities in West Sacramento. So we relied a lot on that. We've steered a lot of businesses to those areas. And Dan Ramus is in the audience here, and his family, his father was one of the pioneers in the Southport Business Park. In fact, they developed Southport Business Park initially and negotiated that development agreement. So we've done well attracting businesses there. And there are other areas of the city where we have similar agreements, such as Seaway International Trade Center. This is really just an early check-in with you, just a workshop to kind of get your thoughts. We have some ideas that we've put forward. The city has certainly invested a lot of, invested a lot of money in infrastructure in the Washington district, in the central business district here with the Civic Center, the Transit Center, and so on and so forth. And what we have now is we have a lot of infill development sites that are ready to go. But what we're finding is that the impact fees are really presenting an obstacle and an impediment to, in some cases, to new investment in some of these areas that just have not seen new investment in a long time. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that, and we have some ideas about what areas we would like to do that in. One of those is Washington, as well as West Capitol Avenue. The Port of Sacramento Industrial Park, that's an area that has seen a lot of new smaller businesses that are creating a lot of jobs near Chondo's Tacos, for example, and United Bakery's old location there. So a lot of interesting businesses are moving in there. And as those businesses sort of change the use of those former industrial warehouse buildings, what we're finding is that there's a significant cost to doing that, even though those are the kinds of jobs that the city wants to attract. So one of the examples I use on here is this change of use, whereby a warehouse building is converted either to recreation. And we've had a lot of, for example, theaters, recreation uses want to go into these old warehouses building. Why? Because they're cheap. They're available, there's plenty of space, we have a lot of industrial inventory, and that's a challenge for us. We need to diversify that inventory, we need to find new ways to attract businesses into those kinds of areas, or they're just going to continue to decline and become obsolete. And so that's part of what our strategy is really to attract some of those newer uses. Another example, and one that I attach with the fee estimate, is a warehouse that is being converted to all office. So great, you think, oh, office jobs, these are professional, technical, scientific jobs, great jobs to come to the city, they pay more, the tenant improvements cost more, so there's more property tax generated to the city, a lot of good benefits, but what we found was that the impact fees were a big hurdle for that, even the developer, and this is a long-standing developer in our community, Riverside Commerce Center, Harsh Properties. They located Tomra Food Sorting Solutions, another very, a global company doing R&D, have a lot of sales and office jobs. They'll be expanding very soon, too, and they're going to be converting warehouse to office, and we're going to face that sort of challenge again. And so we want to be ready for that, and that's kind of why this is kind of a late breaking item on the agenda, and why we did not go to the chamber first is we're starting to really get hit with some trouble calls. We're starting getting businesses calling us, developers calling us, saying, hey, I want to do this project, but we're finding that these fees are just, they're twice what we expected, or, converting all this warehouse to office is really a problem for us. We budgeted this much fees, and we're finding out it's just a lot more. So it's kind of kind of an alarm, we need to do something. We've wanted to kind of address the economic development assistance policy and come back to you with some programs anyway, and now it's really starting to be, the private sector that's coming to us saying, hey, we need some help here. We want, what can you do to help us, city? So definitely we'll be having this conversation with the chamber at their Economic Development and Assistance Government Affairs Committee. So I think I'd like to jump into the ideas now that we've just put forth, and these are just ideas that staff has kicked around. The Development Impact Fee Deferral Program is a great program, and in combination with the SKIP program has been a great asset to developments that are pending right now that want to move forward, that, for example, have, $1.4 million in impact fees, just to give you a sense of what those can be. If we can defer until SKIP issues bonds, which they do twice a year, that works out great. There may be cases where we want to defer for beyond final inspection, which is what the city manager has authority to do now. So that's just something that we could look at, deferring to final occupancy, or deferring more local fees for smaller businesses and that kind of thing. That's just some ideas there. The business loan program, like to explore that. We had fairly good success with the CDBG loan program, but it had a lot of bureaucracy, red tape that a lot of businesses were put off by in terms of target income job creation, having to document that, and a lot of paperwork. We would like to explore partnering with local banks to do either a gap loan program or do some kind of loan guarantee, something that extends our capital by using private lenders' capital, because there's a lot of banks in town. They would like to make loans. We would like to work with businesses that are bankable to some extent, but maybe just need a little bit of help, and that worked pretty well, like I said, with United Bakery and Capital Bowl, where they were good businesses that were bankable, but they maybe had a gap in what they could borrow. And so that's where the city can come in and kind of provide a little more capital to make that expansion possible. The Housing Development Assistance Fund is an idea that we have discussed at staff level recently. We're finding that a lot of the housing projects in what we call target economic and housing areas, such as the Washington District and the Central Business District, want to move forward, but are getting these very large fee estimates, and so they're kind of going, I don't know if this is going to pencil. And so we have the ability to take, as I mentioned in this report, potentially some tax increment funds, whether it's Measure G or EIFD, and Katie, please serve to correct me if I referencing those incorrectly, but for projects that are meeting our design criteria and that are, building at the densities that we want to see in some of these pioneering areas, some of these areas where we've planned for high-density development and transit-oriented development. We want to encourage those kinds of developments. And so this is a way where we could use city's assistance to either combine it with a fee deferral or also provide credits for some of the fees if they're meeting a transit target or if they're meeting a density target, things of that nature. So that's where we're going with that. Architectural design would be another area that, to get a really great design, well-designed project, I think that would be the kind of criteria that we would recommend to you be considered for the development assistance. Lastly, co-working and business accelerator spaces. This is proving to be a success in many other communities. You've all heard of Hacker Lab and the Urban Hive. Hacker Lab now has several locations in the region, including Sacramento, Rancho Cordova, Rockland. And it's a way to really nurture and accelerate small business and technology startup companies. And we get a lot of interest from those kinds of companies to come to West Sacramento, but we really don't have a specific program of assistance to offer them. So that might be something that we could explore, either working with developers or business owners, a building owner that has an old building that is having trouble renting it. Maybe there's a way to encourage them to create a co-working space. Or to create a business accelerator, partnering with the college or partnering with the chamber or some other business resource that can support young startup businesses. We get a lot of calls like that where we really just don't have. And the microenterprise program was one of those programs that really was valuable. It was something that we could say, hey, you want to start a business? You're a resident in West Sacramento? We have this program for you. We have microenterprise training, and at the end of that training, you could be eligible for a $5,000 grant to start your business. Those are great, tools to really start a business or get a business going. And lastly, just I attached a few examples. Sacramento's business loan program and Elk Grove Startup Incentive Program. Those are just examples. We don't intend to copy those programs. We want to really develop something that is more West Sacramento and more meets what our goals and targets are. And that concludes my presentation. We are looking for ideas, feedback, comments on what we've presented, ideas that you may have as members and business owners in the community. We will be then visiting the Chamber of Commerce on December 12th to get their input. I'm sure they'll have some good input there. And we would be just seeking your direction and support in moving forward and coming back to you in January with more specific program ideas and criteria.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to hear from Mr. Ramos before we discuss your presentation. So don't step too far away, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramos? Thank you for showing up this evening.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. The only one here. Anyway, good evening, Chairman Price and the members of the commission. It's great to be here. I had the distinct pleasure of sitting in your chair 30 years ago as the first chairman of this commission when we first incorporated. A little trivia, the Economic Development Commission, we called it then, was actually the Planning Commission was first. We were the first other commission that was, put into play in the city way back when. So this has always been an important commission, my favorite. So glad to be here.
And if I might add, I had the pleasure of meeting your father.
Oh, wonderful.
With Mr. Oates at a social event, 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah. Well, we don't have Mr. Oates around anymore, but my dad's still around and doing his thing. So actually, I'm sorry, I tend to blab, so hopefully you can grant me the courtesy of a little extra time with the 3 minutes. But I appreciate all that. I wanted to come and I just wanted to lend my support to this effort. It's really important. Everything Diane says, it's real important. Now, this is when we got to get strategic and really put our thinking caps on to economic development. There's a lot of competition out there on this stuff, and we are well positioned, West Sacramento is, through the efforts of the staff previously, our infrastructure financing district strategy that our city managers, Aaron put together early on before he became city manager, is a wonderful tool no other communities have, so we have a lot there. But I guess what I wanted to stress today is that in terms of economic development, sometimes it's, this economic development, and we have a great staff that, Buster, what's out there, Diane's there day in and day out trying to get things done and stuff, but sometimes it's more comprehensive. It involves the building department, involves the planning department, because that's where things tend to get bogged down, and Diane and I will get just as frustrated up there having to deal with it, because people tend to, they don't share the same enthusiasm about a project that we all do, and there's complications. We have the luxury in this community over the course of the last 50 years, even when back with the county, we had a lot of spec buildings built there, a lot of spec industrial. He talks about some of the buildings at Port Industrial Park. They're wonderful buildings. They're still in good shape. They've been well maintained, but we are seeing this transition, and there's real potential. Some of these barrier firms that have been just priced out of the market that are doing we're a perfect place to settle in and get those type of companies. But what happens is frustrating, and Diane's been there, we've seen it now over at Riverside Center, this whole change of use thing. It sometimes goes beyond just adding some more office space or something like that. It can be, sometimes its interpretation comes out of the building department or the fire marshal or whatever it is, but it can trigger some tremendous costs, fire sprinkler upgrades. We all have to deal with ADA, but those are the things that get everybody frustrated. It's time delay and stuff like that. So I just wanted to, if we look at this thing, and I should have said this, I'm here representing Ramco Enterprises. I'm not here representing the chamber, but I've been involved with the chamber for many, many years, sitting on their economic affairs or public affairs thing for 37 years. I've been on that committee, but the chamber would be a wonderful resource to collaborate with. I think I'm glad they're coming on the 12th, but I think it's really important that we look at this comprehensively at the chamber. I'd be more than happy to, whatever spirit, there's some great development companies here in this community. Diane mentioned the McLaughlin Company and Harsh and some other ones that really would like to, pull up our sleeves and really get to work on doing something to make us very competitive. There's some great programs out there. Diane mentioned a few of them. There's even some other ones going on in the region that region business has been advocating. Permit simplicity. I think it's something we should look at. Elk Grove does it now. Ranch Cordova, City of Sacramento just picked up the program. And it's a way, that's another advantage we have, because we have these buildings already in place. So getting a permit quick is like night and day of a decision for a company to come here or not. And that's a very proven program that's been down in the city of Phoenix in Arizona, and it's being adopted here. I think it's something we should look at. There's a RISE program. Diane mentioned about the bank stuff. RISE is a thing where, and I'd love to have the representatives from Region Business come explain some of these programs. What that is they, there again, Elk Grove, Ranch Cordova, and the city of Sacramento just pledged, they're investing some of their own city money that sits in the banks, and the banks back in New York. We'll take a certain percentage of that and invest it in our local community banks here with some criteria there that they have it available for loans for the community. And they get the same rate of repay, same rate of return, and it meets some criteria that they have, because city has investment criteria you got to meet. But it's been a wonderful program for help to infuse local money into our community banks. We got some great community banks here. First Northern's one I can think of right here. So there's some great programs, but I guess my theme here is comprehensively, let's all roll up our sleeves. We love to work with the EDH Commission on this. So that's kind of what I wanted to say tonight. So let's get to work. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Ms. Richards, are there any comments? I'm sure Commissioner White has a few.
Oh,
because
yeah,
she
more,
has benefited from.
I've benefited from the loan. With all of the strings and all of the reporting attached to it that was not Diane's doing. Diane, my first question for you, thank you very much, and I'm excited to be part of this. I'm actually working with the city of Sacramento right now in helping to redefine their business incentive program.
Really?
Yeah, just started. But what decision are you looking from us tonight? Or recommendation, or what do you want from us tonight?
Direction to move forward with developing some specific incentive programs and with modifying the development assistance policy to bring it up to date, as well as ideas we may not have thought of, other ideas you have heard from other cities that you think have merit for West Sacramento, other things that might be unique to West Sacramento, other programs that you think would be beneficial that we have not maybe thought of, or, yeah, so.
So what we were working with Sacramento on is how to revise theirs to help attract businesses that also match the city's climate change action plan. You know, for rewarding people for doing things with zero net energy buildings, and for using new building materials and not having transit. And so that's what we'll be working with Sacramento on. But yesterday I was at a presentation from Arch Nexus, who built the Living Building in downtown Sacramento. Very fascinating. I have learned more about it than I knew, but one of the things is that they don't use any water or sewer. They make all their own water. They capture all their own sewage in a composting system, and yet Sacramento forced them to pay sewer hookup fees and water hookup fees, and they have to pay monthly bills. And they also make all of their own energy. But I thought, gosh, what a great way for West Sacramento to do something really novel and to let these buildings be off-grid. And that helps us with our climate change, our global action plan,
Absolutely.
too.
Good point. Yeah. Any other comments? I mean, I personally have no experience developing anything currently. Used to work for the city of Roseville, and they I mean, sales tax and that sort of thing with the Galleria, but you're not talking about that kind of incentive. But definitely having pulled a number of permits and paid fees in my career before I retired, I can see, as Mr. Ramos mentioned, the difficulties, the delays. So anything you can do for a builder, a developer, to expedite that and to lessen that initial cost because of payback, or just deferring it, because the payback may be a year, 2 years down the road before the project's completed and there's a notice of occupancy. Any other? Yes, sir, Commissioner.
Thank you. I'd just like to say I'm completely supportive of commencing a process to look at how we can provide additional incentives for businesses coming to town. I think it's great, and if the action you're looking from us tonight is to support kicking that off and support the ideas you brought forward, I'm on board with that. I think you're headed down the right path. I would encourage you to meet with the chamber, as Mr. Ramos brought up, and talk to them. You have boots on the ground there that could probably give you insight that would help expand sort of the base beyond what we can provide here this evening. I have a question for you, however, because you brought up the change of use impact fees as a potential hurdle, and I was looking at that earlier, and it referenced attachment 2 as an example of change of use impact fees, and I flipped to that, and I guess I would say I was absolutely shocked by the number, and I want to better understand it. Attachment 2, when I flip to it, I see change of use impact fees, and I assume what happened here was that you were changing from an industrial building to an office, and there were change of use to make that shift in an existing structure that's already developed, over $500,000 in new fees, just to do TIs inside of an existing structure. That defeats, in my mind, the whole purpose of moving into an existing structure. I mean, why, if you're going to end up with almost $600,000 of additional impact fees that were unanticipated, why not just go build the building you want to be in, or look for a tilt-up somewhere else rather than moving into a warehouse?
Because you're going to pay even more. There are more impact
Yeah,
fees than on this
yeah.
list for building new, right, Deanne?
Plus the cost of construction of
Yep.
of the
Yeah,
new-
there's Swanson's
new
Hawk
facility.
mitigation fees and.
Well, that's if you're going into
fee and
green fields.
Transit fees and Caltrans
Environmental
fees,
impact
and, yeah.
report.
So anyway, I'm trying to better understand the change of use impact fee, and I'm thinking more in terms of, we had friends that were interested in a roller skating rink, and they were going into an existing warehouse, right? So a warehouse has large trucks coming to it daily that are having huge impacts on our roads. They have waste issues associated with it, large water uses, right? And if I wanted to turn that, I lost my tenant and I wanted to put in a roller skating rink, and all of a sudden, I've got $500,000 in impact fees, I'm not getting a roller skating rink. It's just not going to happen because that doesn't pencil. And I get, if you're building Class A office, that's a whole different ballgame. But there are, I would assume, and I'm just thinking of near the port, and I've been over there and go to Chondo's and the breweries that are there. These are great change of uses, right? Where you're taking a light industrial business and you're instead putting in something new and innovative. And if they're getting hit with fees at this level, I would think that prohibits a lot of these businesses from coming to West Sacramento, which has been part of what has made our area so great, is encouraging those types of businesses. So I guess my advice would be taking a good look at that change of use impact fees and where appropriate or where possible, looking to reduce those. I think would encourage more new startups to go into underutilized space.
Thank you.
Do you have any,
Thank
well,
you.
I'll just, to your point, that if you take a warehouse and then it becomes a building occupied by people, as Mr. Ramos mentioned, we all know there's ADA requirements, then there becomes occupancy loads and fire sprinklers and on and on and on, 1 hour fire walls or more, depending on the use, and it goes on and on and on. So the change of use, it depends on what it is, and
Well, and those are building code requirements that I understand you would have to do anyway, but then all of a sudden you get hit with the city hall impact fee, and all of a sudden you got tacked on an additional $50,000 that you were not anticipating. That, for a small business, I would think
Yeah.
that's a big dollar.
Yeah.
That's a big dollar.
I think you're bringing up a really important point, and when the city does redo the impact fees, and it's every few years, they bring it to the Economic Development and Government Affairs Commission with the chamber, and it's like a year-long process of going through and reviewing what it is for everybody else. And every other city and every other county has this same thing, and we're actually a little cheaper than most places. So we stay really competitive, and I think what Diane's point is, yeah, this really stinks, and even though we might be a little cheaper, is there a way that we can use this business development money to help offset some of these fees? You'll see that some of these on the attachments say that there's a credit assumption, but others have no credits. So are there ways that we might be very creative in finding a way to give them a credit or give them some help with this? And you and I are not the people, I don't build stuff, so
yeah.
I'm not the right
I
person.
agree with you.
No, you're absolutely right, and I want to point out that these fee calculations are entirely legitimate and supported by nexus studies that verify that the impact on the city's roads, water, sewer, parks, et cetera, that these office uses generate more impact on those uses because they have more employees and they have more traffic and so on and so forth. So they're completely legitimate, but they're off-putting to attracting the kinds of businesses that we would like to continue to attract as we diversify our economy. I also have to confess that recently, in fact, just today, this particular project, the developer engaged in a process with economic development and community development to review these fees and made the case successfully that some of these fees, some of the impacts were similar to the prior use, which was a technical school. It was WyoTech. It was a WyoTech technical school. And so they were able, community development was very diligent in working with our finance department and working with a developer to compare, like literally line by line, item by item, the impacts from the technical school compared to this new professional office use. So they have, the good news is these have come down significantly. The bad news is that every business that does go into every new business that goes into a use that was, let's say recreation, because we had Lake 5 soccer, we had those folks trying to go into a warehouse building, and same thing, if you're going to have an assembly occupancy where you have lots of people occupying a warehouse that was formerly just racks of stored product, that's a different fire hazard, it's a different building code, so all these are legitimate charges. It's just that we need to figure out a way to address them so that it isn't an impediment to us diversifying our economy and remaining economically competitive.
So forgive me for the ignorance on the issue, but so development impact fees, I'm really familiar with. This one says it was assessed in 2005. The original fees were assessed in 2005, and then these fees are the updated, so you're looking at 13 years difference. I guess what I don't understand is, in the example you just gave, right, where you have an assembly use that's going into what was formerly a warehouse, I can see how creating the original structure had a development impact that was nexus-based and that you could show how there was a demand that was going to be there. But if you're changing uses and you're just going from one tenant to the next, and that use that you're changing from is permitted under the zoning code, shouldn't it have been assumed when you were originally assessing that fee that the uses that were permissible within that zone were likely to be there, and you assessed the fee at the original construction of that structure rather than every time it re-tenants?
That's a really good question that I am afraid I don't have the answer for. I need to look actually at the law that, and that would be something that community development would be able to address. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it seems logical, but in a particular zoning district, there are so many different uses that are allowed, and the building is built for a particular use. And maybe some of you, that, the building, I actually looked up the building occupancy codes myself when this came up to see what the difference is. And there is some interpretation, but a building is assessed and the building code is applied based on the proposed use of that building. And so that's where it comes in. It doesn't matter what the zoning is. It's based on what the proposed building use is and how it was structured, and how it has to be structured to be safe, and so on and so forth now, so.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's my experience also. And I'll just throw this out, essentially the disaster that happened in Oakland with the Ghost Ship warehouse, a warehouse that somebody thought they could convert into apartments, and they didn't meet and the code's only the minimum requirement. They didn't meet the minimum requirements for public safety, fire safety.
Right.
So I'd like to make a recommendation, and if any commissioners have any comments about my recommendation, please, that you meet with the chamber and that you go through the process, review process, get ideas, and I would love for you to come back with a draft, or even include us in a workshop as you go forward. I agree, I think this is important. I understand the competition between our neighbors across the river and Elk Grove, and your comment about the warehouse inventory is a positive asset for the city of West Sacramento. And how do we entice people to use it and move forward? Again, any other comments from the commissioners as far as a recommendation?
I just wanted to piggyback on, I think that Chris had a really wonderful idea. I love what the city of Sacramento is doing, and I think that we could definitely capitalize on where they have missed their mark, that we could maybe do that better with maybe avoiding sewer fees and sewer hookup fees and things like that, if it's going to be a sustainable net zero kind of project business. And my other recommendation was that the city of Elk Grove is, searching for more of the tech community. And I know that the city of West Sacramento has been big on trying to lure biotech and research and development and fuel cell and all of that. And I think that as a city resident and, a member of the community, there is a lot of people that are really caring about sustainability. And I would love to see the city of West Sacramento do an incentive for anybody that can bring in a net zero project or can bring in some sort of research and development for renewable energy, or let's see, what else were my thoughts? And then maybe even for a business that could create more sort of like a mini business city where For instance, in my dream world, it would be really nice to work in a location where I had shopping and daycare and transit. And if a business were to meet those criterias, and I'm also thinking about for our West Capitol development, like what would come in there, what would make sense and be positive. I think that it would be really great if we had more residential housing along West Capitol that would serve some of these little businesses. So it's more like a mixed use, sort of everywhere and near businesses. So it's not just, this is a business park, and if you need to go grocery shopping, you have to go, a mile away. Or have local farm stands, or mix agriculture and daycare along with the big tech sort of facilities that are nearby, and offer incentives that companies that sort of want to help assist or fill in spots where maybe there is, it's just missing, a grocery store, and this would be an ideal location for 1,000 workers or something like that. Those were my suggestions.
Any other comments, Mr.?
I just wanted to say that I agree with the idea of having workshops, if that's a possibility. And if we could be invited to those and brainstorm some ideas, I think that'd be great.
Workshop
Commissioner
with
Campbell.
the chamber? Workshop with the chamber?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to make, I'm going to make our recommendation longer still. It's being written down, transcribed, and we'll all sign it later. You articulated a spectrum of different economic development programs, SKIP to equity financing to small business training. I would, in following with Commissioner Bell and White, want to ask whatever work you do, employ some analysis that tracks back to the city's strategic plan and visions, who it wants to be. I think it's difficult for any community to offer an unlimited number of incentive programs. That's a burden on you. It's also difficult for reporting and administration. It's just too complicated to do. I think we have to be strategic about it, and we should be guided by a vision. West Sacramento's been particularly good at that, and I think whatever sorts of economic development support programs that we do put forward, they prioritize the long-term community development and societal vision that we want to create for West Sacramento.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner
I
White?
promise my last one. I just do want to say that Diane's been doing this for a long time, and back when Capitol Bowl got the loan, it was part of redevelopment money, and we unfortunately don't have redevelopment anymore, but West Sacramento was one of the few cities that was successful with that. And it is because we tied it to having some type of, you had to show that you were actually doing something with the money. And I think that's really important. And we've seen a lot of other cities that used redevelopment or used other business development programs, and they never expected results. And what they ended up with is a Solyndra building that's way overbuilt and it's really gorgeous, and they didn't pay anything for it, and they went bankrupt. And so I think it's great that we continue to look for some pot of gold at that end of that rainbow.
Thank you.
Commissioner DiCamillo.
Hi, thank you. This is really fascinating. I just wanted to make a comment that I really appreciated, that there's a mixture of approaches that you're exploring, and that seems like a really good idea in terms of attracting some of those larger businesses, that research and development, but then also this type of business loan and gap funding to attract some of the, really, small businesses that are really, roots here in the community. So I just think, as you move forward, I think that's great to kind of look into both. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner
The thing that I forgot to mention, and to sort of piggyback on what Chris was saying, is accountability measures and certain markers. I thought that the city of Sacramento had really strict criteria, and I did not like that. I liked what Elk Grove had set, which was to employ 5 employees. I mean, this would be for people that would be qualifying for some sort of credit or financial assistance, and I just wanted to add that I think that those are important measures of accountability that are built in for the long haul. So that was it.
And just to clarify, did you think that Sacramento's were good or too strict?
No, I thought that Sacramento was far too strict for our city, and I thought Elk Grove, they had mentioned employ 5 people, working wages. I thought that was far more reasonable.
And just to tag on to that, I didn't like the term forgivable loan. Elk Grove had a grant program, which just terminology-wise is more appealing to me, that after it converts into a grant. Anyhow, any other comments, commissioners?
I think it's a great idea.
Yes, and I hope you've gotten enough comments, and we'd love to see you back.
Very much. We have, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to general administrative items. Any comments from the commissioners? Any staff updates, aside from the fact that Polly is leaving?
Yes, this is, good evening, Commissioners. I'm Katie Jacobson, staff to your commission. I, with great sadness, do want to announce that this is Polly's last meeting, and we will miss her very much. I've had the pleasure of working with her over the past couple years, and she is so strong at everything we've asked her to do, and it's just going to be a real loss to the city. So I hope you take a minute to say goodbye to her.
Sure.
Thank you.
In terms of other updates, in the economic development arena for our city, really, you probably already saw there was a lot of publicity about CalSTR's board voting to add the second tower in the Washington district. So they'll be, they've already done a lot of architectural and design work on it, and their entitlements are already pretty much done. So I think they'll be moving pretty fast to get that built. And then already are beginning to think about their staff moving into the new building and then renting out the old tower to another tenant. So it just creates more, more population, jobs, and residential in our Washington district and our Riverfront district. So that's really, really great news. And we received 3 SACOG grants. That's also great news, including the North Riverfront extension, which will be improving the existing Riverwalk from the historic I Street Bridge up to the Broderick Boat Ramp, and also doing a lot of frontage and safety improvements on 3rd Street and around the corner onto C Street, and somewhat in preparation of the new I Street Bridge coming through. We also received about $3 million for electric vehicle charging stations, and those are geared toward industrial vehicles, so we're doing a lot of work on that. And the match on that grant was all provided by the private sector, I believe. And also we got less of an amount, I think about half of what we asked for, but we are considering how to rescope it to do repairs on West Capitol Avenue for safety reasons. So that's my update.
Okay, any calendar of events that we should note? Excuse me. You had a comment, Commissioner White?
No, I don't need to check. I was just going to say that that EV Church grant that we got, the $3 million, we were the only project to get fully funded on that. SACOG funded everybody else for a part of what they asked, and we got it all.
Okay, congratulations.
Good job.
I just wanted to note the next EDA meeting is at 6 p.m. on January 23rd, so.
Okay.
This Friday is the Christmas tree lighting.
I was
Yes.
going to mention that.
Okay.
Out in front. I watched them install the lights. With that, can I Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's adjourned.